Have you ever looked at a car driving down the street and thought, did an alien actually design this? Welcome to the wildest garage on the internet. Today we are counting down 10 of the most bizarre, mind-bending, and downright weird vintage cars that actually exist in real life. We are talking about literal flying fish bowls, terrestrial UFOs, and a vehicle so insane you will not believe it balances on just 2 wheels. Yes, stick around for number 1 because it completely defies the laws of physics. Which of these weird rides is your favorite? Let me know in the comments below right now, and do not forget to smash that subscribe button for more crazy automotive history. Let's get right into it. Kicking off our list at number 10 is a vehicle that perfectly captures the quirky spirit of the 1970s, the AMC Pacer. If you grew up watching classic comedies, you probably recognize this rolling greenhouse as the iconic Mirthmobile from the hit 1992 movie Wayne's World. But even before its Hollywood stardom, the Pacer was turning heads for all the wrong, or perhaps right, reasons. American Motors Corporation wanted to create a fuel-efficient compact car that felt extremely spacious on the inside. Their solution was to make a vehicle as wide as a massive luxury sedan but incredibly short in length. The result was a bizarre, jelly bean-like shape that quickly earned it the affectionate nickname, the Flying Fishbowl. What truly makes the AMC Pacer an absolute oddity of automotive engineering is the sheer volume of glass used in its construction. Nearly 40% of the car's surface area is covered in glass, giving the driver unparalleled visibility but also turning the cabin into a literal rolling sauna on a sunny day. Furthermore, AMC engineers included a brilliant but bizarre hidden feature: asymmetrical doors. The passenger side door was exactly 4 inches longer than the driver's side door. This was designed to make it easier for people to climb into the back seat while parked safely by the curb. It was a weirdly practical choice wrapped in a highly unconventional package. Despite its strange proportions and bubbly aesthetic, the Pacer gained a massive cult following and remains a beloved piece of pop culture history today. It was a bold swing by a smaller car company trying to reinvent the American daily driver during a massive fuel crisis. While it may look tame compared to some of the absolute monsters coming up on this list, it set the stage for thinking completely outside the traditional box. But if you think a wide fishbowl is weird, just wait until you see what happens when a car company tries to blend a sports car with a chunky SUV in the 1990s. Coming in at number 9 is a vehicle suffering from the ultimate automotive identity crisis, the Suzuki X90. Released in the mid-1990s, this bizarre little machine looks like someone took a rugged off-road SUV, chopped off the back half, and tried to glue on the trunk of a sporty 2-seater coupe. Suzuki wanted to create a fun, youth-oriented lifestyle vehicle, but what they actually built left consumers utterly confused. Was it a sports car, a compact truck, or an off-roader? Nobody really knew, and its bubbly, cartoonish styling only added to the sheer bewilderment of anyone who saw it driving down the street. One of the most defining and strange features of the X90 was its standard T-top roof, a feature usually reserved for cool muscle cars or sleek sports coupes. You could pop off the glass panels and cruise in the open air, all while sitting high up on a truck-like suspension with available 4-wheel drive. Despite its rugged underpinnings inherited from the Suzuki Sidekick, the X90 only had 2 seats and barely enough trunk space to hold a weekend's worth of groceries. It notoriously failed to catch on with the public because it lacked the practicality expected from a utility vehicle. However, the Suzuki X90 did find an incredibly unique second life in the world of guerrilla marketing. If you lived in a major city during the late 90s or early 2000s, you probably saw these quirky cars painted silver and blue, driving around with a massive oversized can of Red Bull energy drink strapped to the back. Yes, before Mini Coopers took over the promotional fleet, this bizarre vehicle was the original promotional tool for the energy drink giant. Speaking of quirky and impractical vehicles, our next bizarre ride literally took design inspiration from a slow-moving garden mollusk. Sliding into the number 8 spot is the Nissan S-Cargo, a commercial van from 1989 that takes the concept of literal vehicle naming to a hilarious extreme. Created during the peak of Japan's economic bubble, Nissan launched a special series featuring retro-styled limited production vehicles. The S-Cargo was their take on a small delivery van, and the designers clearly had a massive sense of humor. The name is a brilliant double entendre. It stands for small cargo, but when spoken aloud, it sounds exactly like escargot, the French word for snail. They literally designed it to look like a rolling snail. Everything about the S-Cargo's exterior screams quirky and unusual. It features an incredibly tall arched roofline that mimics a snail shell, paired with a flat sloping front end and adorable protruding bug-eye headlights resembling a snail's antennas. The massive side windows are strangely shaped, and the overall proportions look like something ripped straight out of a whimsical children's cartoon. Inside, the weirdness continues with a centrally mounted speedometer looking like a vintage wall clock, a tiny two-spoke steering wheel, and a completely flat dashboard designed to act as a functional table for busy delivery drivers on the go. Despite its comical appearance, the Nissan S-Cargo was actually incredibly practical for small businesses like florists and bakeries in Tokyo, thanks to its high roof and easy-to-load cargo area. With only about 12,000 of these delightful snail vans ever produced for the Japanese market, they are incredibly rare and highly sought after by quirky car collectors around the world today. While the S-Cargo maximized its interior space with a tall roof, our next weird car took the concept of a tall and narrow cabin to a terrifying phone booth-like extreme. Get ready for a truly claustrophobic ride. At number 7, we present the Scootacar, a British microcar from 1957 that looks exactly like a motorized telephone booth. The origin story of this bizarre vehicle is just as weird as its appearance. Legend has it that the wife of a prominent railway locomotive manufacturer wanted a car that was easier to park than her bulky sports car. So, the engineers who normally built massive industrial trains decided to try making a microcar. They basically took a popular scooter engine, placed a seat over it, and built an incredibly tall, narrow fiberglass shell around the driver. The proportions of the Scootacar are genuinely hilarious. It is significantly taller than it is wide, giving it a top-heavy, cartoonish appearance that makes you wonder how it does not instantly tip over when turning a corner. The driver sits straddling the engine in the center of the cabin, steering with traditional motorcycle handlebars instead of a normal steering wheel. Believe it or not, this tiny rolling phone booth actually claimed to seat 2 people, with a brave passenger squeezed awkwardly behind the driver in an incredibly cramped tandem configuration. It looked like a toy escaped onto public roads. Powering this strange fiberglass bubble was a tiny engine that pushed the Scootacar to a terrifying top speed of roughly 50 miles per hour. Driving one at that speed while sitting that high up in such a narrow vehicle was often described as an adrenaline-pumping near-death experience. Only about 1,000 Scootacars were ever built, making them an incredibly rare oddity of post-war British motoring. If you thought driving a phone booth was an adventure, wait until you see an asymmetrical sports car that looks like it belongs to a comic book supervillain planning a massive heist. Cruising into the number 6 spot is the wildly imaginative 1960 Plymouth XNR, a concept car that completely threw the rulebook of symmetry out the window. Designed by the eccentric automotive designer Virgil Exner, this vehicle was Plymouth's radical attempt to answer the Chevrolet Corvette. But instead of a traditional sports car, Exner created something that looks like the ultimate getaway vehicle for a comic book villain. The most mind-boggling feature of the XNR is its deliberate asymmetry. The driver's side and the passenger's side look completely different, a bold design choice almost never seen in automotive history. The entire design of the XNR is heavily focused on the driver, treating the passenger as a mere afterthought. On the driver's side, a massive sweeping headrest fairing rises up behind the seat and continues all the way down the rear deck lid to form a gigantic tail fin. To emphasize this unbalanced look, the driver's side hood features a large asymmetrical hood scoop. Meanwhile, the passenger seat is positioned lower and can be completely covered by a metal tonneau cover, effectively turning the car into a single-seat futuristic land speed racer when you are driving solo down the highway Underneath all that asymmetrical madness, the XNR was fully functional. It was powered by a modified engine pushing around 250 horsepower, capable of hitting a top speed of 150 miles per hour. After its show car duties were over, the XNR had a wild history. It ended up in the Middle East, miraculously survived a civil war hidden in an underground garage, and was eventually fully restored. From asymmetrical madness, we move to our next bizarre masterpiece, which looks less like a car and more like a legendary superhero's personal aerodynamic flying weapon. At number 5 is a jaw-dropping marvel of Italian design, the 1954 Alfa Romeo BAT 7. This is where automotive engineering meets high art. The BAT in the name does not actually stand for the flying mammal, but rather Berlinetta Aerodynamica Technica. This car was the second in a series of 3 extreme concept vehicles designed with the sole purpose of achieving the lowest aerodynamic drag coefficient possible. But let's be entirely honest here. With its swooping lines, hidden wheels, and menacing design, this car looks exactly like a vintage Batmobile built for Bruce Wayne himself. Before we dive deeper into the insane aerodynamics, I want to play a quick game. This car is an ultra-rare masterpiece. Take a guess in the comments right now. How many millions of dollars do you think the Alfa Romeo BAT Trio sold for at a recent auction? Pause the video and drop your guess. The most striking visual features of the BAT 7 are undoubtedly its massive, wildly curved rear tail fins. These dramatically curve inward towards the center of the car, looking like giant bat wings folding in, flawlessly guiding the airflow over the back. Every single detail of the BAT 7, from the heavily shrouded front nose to the teardrop-shaped glass canopy, was optimized to cut through the air like a knife. The result was an unbelievable aerodynamic drag coefficient of 0.19, putting most modern supercars to absolute shame. Oh, and for those guessing the price, the trio of BAT cars sold together at an auction for a staggering $14.8 million. $14 million is a lot of money, but our next vehicle is priceless if you ever played with Hot Wheels as a kid. Rolling in at number 4 is the legendary 1967 Dodge Deora, a highly customized futuristic pickup truck that defied all logic and standard safety regulations. If this bizarre wedge-shaped vehicle looks incredibly familiar to you, there is a very good reason for that. When Mattel launched their original lineup of 16 Hot Wheels die-cast toy cars in 1968, the Dodge Deora was one of the most popular models. Millions of kids grew up racing this exact weird truck across their living room floors. But the real full-size Deora is even stranger than the tiny metal toy. Built by the famous customizing brothers Mike and Larry Alexander, the Deora was based on a mundane Dodge forward-control pickup truck. The brothers chopped, sliced, and completely modified the body to create a sleek, ultra-low profile that looked like a spaceship cargo hauler. But the absolute weirdest and most mind-boggling feature of the Deora is how you actually get inside it. There are absolutely no side doors on this vehicle. Instead, the entire front windshield and nose sections swing open like a giant clamshell to reveal the futuristic interior cabin hiding directly behind the front glass. To enter, you have to lift the front glass up, swing the lower metal section open, and physically step through the front of the truck right over the steering wheel to sit down. It is a ridiculously complicated and dangerous way to enter a vehicle, but it looks unbelievably cool. Once inside, the driver steers using a wildly modified steering wheel. The Dodge Deora represents a golden era of custom car building where pure imagination completely overruled practicality. If climbing through a windshield seems weird, wait until you see a terrestrial flying saucer with a bubble dome. Coming in at number 3 is a vehicle that genuinely looks like a prop stolen directly from the set of a futuristic sci-fi cartoon, the 1964 Peel Trident. Manufactured on the tiny Isle of Man, the Trident was designed as a futuristic microcar for the bustling city commuter. The company was already famous for creating the Peel P50, widely recognized as the smallest production car in the world. But for their follow-up, they decided to ditch the traditional car shape entirely and build what can only be described as a terrestrial flying saucer resting on 3 tiny wheels. The defining feature of the Peel Trident is its massive clear plexiglass bubble dome that serves as the roof, windshield, and doors all rolled into one. To get inside, you unlatch the entire top half of the car and flip it forward, exposing the incredibly cramped two-seat interior. Sitting inside the Trident feels exactly like sitting inside a life-sized gumball machine. While the bubble dome offered incredible visibility, it had one massive flaw. It acted as a giant magnifying glass for the sun. Driving it on a hot day turned the driver into a slow-roasted human greenhouse. Underneath its retro-futuristic shell, the Trident was powered by a microscopic 49 cubic centimeter moped engine, giving it a top speed of roughly 28 miles per hour. It was incredibly loud, aggressively slow, and terrified anyone brave enough to drive it alongside normal-sized traffic. Despite its flaws, the Peel Trident remains a beloved, quirky piece of automotive history, representing an optimistic space-age vision of the future. A bubble car is undeniably futuristic, but our runner-up is a multi-million-dollar Italian hypercar that literally looks like a UFO gliding mere inches above the hot summer asphalt. Taking the silver medal at number 2 is perhaps the most extreme and radical concept car ever to wear the legendary prancing horse badge, the 1970 Ferrari 512S Modulo. Unveiled at the Geneva Motor Show, this incredibly bizarre machine left audiences utterly speechless. Designed at the Pininfarina design house, the Modulo looks absolutely nothing like a traditional Ferrari. Instead, it looks exactly like an unidentified flying object that crash-landed onto a racetrack. The car is so unimaginably low to the ground, standing at exactly 36.8 inches tall, that it appears to be hovering. Before we talk about how you get into this spaceship, let's play our guessing game one more time. This is a one-off Ferrari prototype with a massive V12 engine. Take a wild guess in the comments. If this UFO were sold today, how many millions do you think it would fetch? Drop your number down below. Now back to the weirdness. The Modulo has no conventional doors or windows, and its wheels are almost entirely hidden by the sleek bodywork. To enter the cockpit, the entire roof, windshield, and side windows slide dramatically forward on special mechanical rails. This forces the driver to awkwardly step over the side pods and slide down into the aggressively reclined seats. Everything about the Modulo was meant to shock the world. It featured 24 bizarrely placed holes on the engine cover to show off the roaring 5-liter racing engine sitting right behind the driver's head. It is a breathtaking piece of wedge-era design art, and for those guessing its value, experts value this one-of-a-kind UFO at an easy $20 to $30 million. We have seen UFOs, but nothing can prepare you for a car that completely defies gravity. And finally, the moment you have been waiting for. At number 1, we have a vehicle so bizarre, so conceptually insane that it literally defies the laws of physics, the 1961 Ford Gyron. When you look at a car, you naturally expect it to have 4 wheels, or maybe 3 if it is a quirky microcar. But the Ford designers in the early 60s looked at the future and said, 4 wheels are boring, let's build a car that balances on just 2 wheels. The Ford Gyron is a massive, incredibly long, sleek, futuristic automobile resembling a motorcycle. So, how on earth does a heavy enclosed car not immediately tip over and crash into the pavement? The answer lies in the name: gyroscopes. The Gyron was designed to utilize a massive, complex internal gyroscope system that would spin at high speeds. This created enough centripetal force to keep the vehicle perfectly upright, even when sitting completely still at a red light. To prevent the car from falling over when the engine was turned off, 2 small retractable outrigger legs would automatically deploy from the sides, much like the kickstand on a bicycle or an airplane's landing gear. Visually, the Ford Gyron was a masterpiece of the jet age era. Shaped like a sleek silver Delta Wing fighter jet, it featured a massive glass bubble canopy, heavy chrome rocket thruster detailing in the back, and a cockpit controlled by a central steering dial instead of a conventional wheel. While the Gyron never made it into mass production due to the immense cost and complexity of the gyroscopic technology, It stands today as the absolute pinnacle of weird, audacious, and unimaginably cool automotive design. It is the ultimate proof that car designers used to dream without absolutely any limits. From the flying fishbowl AMC Pacer to the gravity-defying two-wheeled Ford Gyron, automotive history is filled with brilliant mad scientists. These 10 weird vintage cars prove that sometimes throwing the rulebook out the window creates absolute magic on the road. Which of these bizarre machines would you actually want to park in your driveway? Let me know your absolute favorite down in the comments right now. If you enjoyed this crazy car countdown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more mind-blowing history. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Think you know classic cars? Think again. Today we are diving into the most bizarre, mind-bending corners of automotive history to show you 10 weird classic cars you will not believe actually exist. From vehicles that look like they drove straight out of a science fiction cartoon to one so insane I have hidden its shape in the shadows right now. Yes, that silhouette at the end is a real functioning car. Can you guess what animal it looks like? Stick around until number 1 to find out. Hit that subscribe button, buckle up, and drop a comment telling me which of these fever dreams is your absolute favorite. Kicking off our list at number 10 is a car that proves great and utterly bizarre things come in incredibly small packages. Meet the Subaru 360, nicknamed the Ladybug in Japan and later in the United States. This tiny vehicle emerged in 1958 as one of the country's first mass-produced K cars. It was specifically designed to comply with strict Japanese government regulations regarding vehicle size and engine displacement following World War II, allowing middle-class families to finally afford personal transportation. It looks like a toy. Underneath its cute exterior, featuring a lightweight fiberglass roof and rear-hinge suicide doors, the Subaru 360 was a marvel of minimalist engineering. It was powered by a microscopic, rear-mounted, air-cooled, two-stroke, two-cylinder engine that initially produced a mind-bogglingly low 16 horsepower. To keep the total weight down to a mere 900 pounds, Subaru utilized advanced monocoque construction, a technique their engineers borrowed from aircraft manufacturing. Despite lacking power, it featured independent suspension, making it a surprisingly comfortable machine for very crowded city streets. While the Subaru 360 was a massive success in its home country, its introduction to the United States market in 1968 by entrepreneur Malcolm Bricklin was a complete disaster. Marketed playfully as cheap and ugly, it simply could not compete with massive American V8 engines. The final nail in the coffin came when Consumer Reports tested the car and brutally rated it not acceptable. Today, the Ladybug is a sought-after collector's item. Wait until you see our next vehicle, which stretched a tiny footprint into an absolute mutant. Coming in at number 9 is the Fiat 600 Multipla, a vehicle that aggressively challenged the fundamental concepts of automotive proportions. Introduced in 1956, this Italian oddity is widely considered by historians as the world's very first purpose-built passenger minivan, arriving decades before the concept was popularized in the United States. Its appearance is wonderfully bewildering. It looks as though someone took a standard Fiat, grabbed it by the nose, and pulled the front end entirely over the front wheels, giving it a flat, snub-nosed profile today. The engineering behind the Multipla is a masterclass in space utilization and mechanical packaging. Fiat engineers took the rear engine layout of the standard car and completely redesigned the front suspension, borrowing heavier-duty parts to support the dramatically shifted forward weight. Despite being only about a foot longer than an original classic Mini Cooper, this magical Italian jelly bean could miraculously seat 6 adults across 3 rows of bench seats. The rear-mounted water-cooled engine generated barely 21 horsepower, but it provided enough grunt to haul passengers safely. The Multipla quickly became the absolute darling of Italian taxi drivers, large families, and tradesmen alike. Its bulbous teardrop shape has cemented its legacy as one of the most recognizable, endearing, and practical oddities in European motoring history. While it might look like a cartoon character's getaway vehicle to modernize, its space-saving genius is completely undeniable and paved the way for modern family transport. But while the Multipla maximized space, our next contender threw practicality entirely out the window in favor of looking like a bright orange wedge. Sliding into the number 8 spot is the incredibly vibrant, aggressively triangular Bond Bug. Born in the United Kingdom in 1970, this is what happens when you decide that four wheels are simply too mainstream and normal doors are utterly boring. Produced by the Reliant Motor Company, the Bug was marketed as a sporty, youth-oriented microcar. Unlike anything else on the road, it was exclusively painted in a blindingly bright tangerine orange color. The entire canopy swung upward on a massive hinge, forcing you to step over the bodywork. Mechanically, the Bond Bug is a fascinating piece of 70s eccentricity that relies on absolute minimalism. It sits on a custom-designed chassis and features a front suspension that utilizes a single wheel, making it a true street-legal tricycle. Power comes from a front-mounted 700 cubic centimeter four-cylinder alloy engine. Because the car weighed essentially nothing, around 870 pounds, that tiny engine could propel the Bug to speeds exceeding 76 miles per hour, making it feel like breaking the sound barrier. The Bond Bug quickly became a massive cult classic, representing the groovy, experimental, and optimistic pop culture vibe of 1970s Britain. Fun fact, the design team later used a Bond Bug chassis as the base to build Luke Skywalker's famous land speeder for the original Star Wars movie. Today, spotting a real Bond Bug at a classic car show is a guaranteed head-turner. If you thought the orange wedge was bizarre, brace yourself for number 7, an electric wedge that escaped from a golf course on Mars. At number 7, we have a vehicle that perfectly captures the absolute panic of the 1970s oil crisis, the Sebring-Vanguard CitiCar. Produced in Florida between 1974 and 1977, this vehicle looks less like a car and more like a block of Swiss cheese that was aggressively sculpted in a wind tunnel. It is a harsh, uncompromising wedge on tiny wheels. During a time when gas lines stretched for blocks, the CitiCar promised a revolutionary solution. It was completely electric, becoming the most produced electric car in American history. The anatomy of the CitiCar is as rudimentary and industrial as its exterior design suggests. It was built around a welded tubular aluminum space frame and wrapped in highly impact-resistant plastic body panels, giving it the aesthetic of an industrial-strength trash can. It was powered by a heavy bank of standard lead-acid golf cart batteries tucked under the seats. The top speed was a terrifyingly slow 38 miles per hour, and the range was a generous 40 miles, provided you avoided stiff headwinds and moderate hills. Despite its obvious limitations and glaring lack of modern safety features, the CitiCar sold thousands of units to desperate commuters seeking immediate relief from soaring gas prices. Vanguard eventually went bankrupt, but today the CitiCar stands as a hilarious yet poignant milestone in the early evolution of the electric vehicle. It is the ultimate retro-futuristic relic, a stark reminder of yesterday's tomorrow. We are getting weirder now. Our next car makes the CitiCar look absolutely enormous, as it is basically a tiny eggshell you wear like a backpack. Buckle up, or rather strap in for number 6, the Brütsch Mopetta. If you have ever looked at a carnival bumper car and thought you wanted to drive it in highway traffic, German designer Egon Brütsch had exactly the same fever dream in 1956. This microcar is quite possibly the smallest street-legal automobile ever conceived by humanity. Designed originally as a quick novelty for a motorcycle exhibition, it looks exactly like half of an eggshell floating precariously on 3 tiny wheels, providing absolutely zero protection from the elements. The mechanics of the Mopetta are hilariously simple, bordering on the absurd. It is powered by a microscopic 50 cubic centimeter two-stroke engine equipped with a manual pull start mechanism, exactly like a vintage lawnmower. There is no traditional steering wheel. Instead, the driver navigates using moped-style handlebars equipped with basic hand controls. The fiberglass body was so incredibly light that the entire vehicle weighed less than 200 pounds. In fact, Brütsch originally intended for it to be amphibious, though that highly optimistic feature never worked. Although investors were initially interested in mass-producing them, the deal fell through, and only 14 of these incredible little egg cars were ever built. This makes the Mopetta one of the rarest and most expensive microcars on the planet today. Driving one is less about daily commuting and more about surviving an extreme low-speed amusement park ride. It is a bold testament to a crazy post-war era. You might think driving a bathtub is crazy, but our number 5 car is literally wearing a tailored raincoat. Breaking into the top 5 is a car that sounds like it was built in a tailor shop rather than an automotive factory, the Velorex Oskar. Emerging from Czechoslovakia in the harsh economic aftermath of World War II, this vehicle was the brilliant brainchild of 2 brothers who wanted to create affordable motorized transport. What makes the Velorex so mind-blowingly weird is its body construction. There is no steel paneling or fiberglass. Instead, the vehicle's body consists entirely of artificial leather stretched tightly over a tubular steel frame. The engineering reflects the extreme austerity and sheer resourcefulness of its time. It is a 3-wheeled vehicle powered by a series of small, reliable motorcycle engines, most notably air-cooled 2-stroke motors. Because the leather-like body was so incredibly light, the Velorex could surprisingly reach speeds of up to 50 miles per hour. However, the deafening noise echoing inside the enclosed fabric cabin made it an intense experience. The canvas panels were attached with snap fasteners, meaning you simply unbutton the panel to fix any damage. Surviving models of the Velorex Oskar are incredibly captivating pieces of history, showcasing extreme human ingenuity in the face of severe resource shortages. They look exactly like rugged little tents on wheels. Now, how much do you think this fabric car sold for at a recent classic car auction? A fully restored Velorex can easily fetch over $15,000 today. Not bad for a motorized raincoat. From a car made of clothes, we move to a car that looks like 2 separate torpedoes strapped together for high-speed madness. At number 4 is a vehicle that looks less like a car and more like a catamaran boat, prepped for a land speed record, the OSI Silver Fox. Unveiled at the 1967 Turin Auto Show, this Italian concept car was designed to tackle the grueling 24 hours of Le Mans race. The design is absolutely jaw-dropping. Instead of a traditional central fuselage, the Silver Fox features a twin-boom layout, 2 distinct aerodynamic pontoons connected by 3 large adjustable spoilers. It looks like a futuristic racing spaceship. The dual fuselage design was a functional aerodynamic experiment aimed at creating perfect balance. To achieve optimal weight distribution, the left pontoon housed the 1-liter 4-cylinder engine, while the right pontoon contained the driver's cabin and spare tire. The open space between the 2 fuselages created a massive channel for airflow, generating incredible downforce and reducing drag to almost nothing. Despite the tiny engine, its radical wind-cheating shape meant it had the potential to hit a top speed of 155 miles per hour. Sadly, the company faced severe financial difficulties and went bankrupt shortly after the Silver Fox prototype was completed. This meant this twin-boom wonder never got its rightful chance to race at Le Mans and prove its aerodynamic genius on the racing track. It remains an obscure, one-off unicorn in the world of classic concept cars. If this twin-torpedo catamaran car had made it to production, would you be brave enough to pilot it? Our number 3 car completely forgot to bring wheels that actually touch the ground. Cruising into the number 3 spot is the Fascination 2DR, a vehicle that will make you aggressively rub your eyes and deeply question reality. Created by designer Paul Lewis, the Fascination looks exactly like a small, streamlined airplane that has had its wings and propellers violently sawed off. Developed in Nebraska in 1969, the Fascination features a sleek, rounded nose, a teardrop cockpit, and a massive vertical tail fin at the back. When you see it rolling down the road, your brain instinctively expects it to take flight. The engineering of the Fascination was just as wonderfully weird as its aviation-inspired fiberglass body. It technically utilizes 3 points of contact but uses 4 wheels, 2 standard wheels tucked closely together in the front like aircraft landing gear, and two larger drive wheels hidden under sweeping pontoon fenders in the rear. Originally intending to use a revolutionary solid energy motor, Lewis eventually installed standard four-cylinder engines. The suspension was unorthodox, designed to bank into corners smoothly, though the hidden wheels made tire maintenance an absolute nightmare. Before the company ultimately collapsed, exactly 5 Fascination cars were built, and miraculously, all 5 still exist today in the hands of dedicated collectors in Nebraska and beyond. They are rolling pieces of modern art, representing a stubborn dreamer's vision of a utopian jet-age future that never quite arrived. Imagine rolling up to a fast food drive-thru in this wingless airplane. The cashier wouldn't know whether to hand you a burger or grant you clearance for takeoff. Speaking of spaceships, our runner-up belongs in Darth Vader's garage. Coming in at a stunning number 2 is a car that fundamentally rewrote the absolute rules of automotive design, the Lancia Stratos Zero. Unveiled by the legendary design house Bertone at the 1970 Turin Motor Show, this concept car is the undisputed king of the automotive wedge era. Standing a mere 33 inches tall, the Stratos Zero is astonishingly low to the ground. It is so fiercely sharp and flat that it does not even have conventional doors. To get inside, you must literally lift the entire windshield up. The mechanical layout was meticulously hidden beneath layers of aggressive geometric bronze louvers. Bertone managed to squeeze a 1.6-liter V4 engine right in the middle of the custom chassis, directly behind the driver's head. The seating position was practically horizontal. Drivers lay so far back they had to physically look up to see out of the massive glass canopy and check their rear view through a tiny periscope system. Every single inch of the Stratos Zero was designed for pure shock value and high-speed aesthetics. The Stratos Zero was a massive industry-shaking success, directly inspiring iconic supercars like the Lamborghini Countach. It was even featured heavily as the car Michael Jackson transformed into in his famous Moonwalker movie. Today, it is universally revered as a priceless masterpiece of industrial design. It is incredibly hard to overstate just how revolutionary this bronze wedge was in 1970. Imagine being the valet handed the keys to this spaceship. We have seen spaceships, but nothing can prepare you for the sheer madness of our number 1 pick. Finally, we reach number 1. The silhouette we showed you at the beginning was not a trick of the light. Behold the Brooke Swan Car, arguably the most eccentric, wealthy person fever dream ever put on wheels. Commissioned in 1910 by an eccentric Scottish millionaire who lived in India, this was not just a car merely inspired by a swan. It was a literal, giant wooden swan hand carved to sit atop a chassis. The car's body features intricate wooden feathers, real gold leaf accents, and glowing, eerie red eyes. The bizarre features of the Swan Car go far beyond its spectacular wooden plumage and luxurious silk-upholstered interior. To clear traffic on chaotic streets, the Swan did not honk a regular horn. Instead, the driver operated a special keyboard that played 8 different exhaust-powered notes. The Swan's beak was hooked up directly to the engine's cooling system, allowing the driver to spray boiling water and steam directly at pedestrians to shoo them away. The rear even featured a valve that dumped whitewash onto the road to simulate droppings. The Brooke Swan Car was so incredibly disruptive and terrifying to the locals that the police eventually banned it from the public streets. It was later sold to a Maharaja who loved it so much he kept it for decades and even ordered a smaller version built. Today, it rests beautifully preserved in a museum in the Netherlands, a glorious monument to automotive insanity. Having too much money and an insane imagination leads to absolute masterpieces of weirdness. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe for more crazy car history. From the tiny Subaru Ladybug and the fabric-covered Velorex to a literal steam-breathing swan, automotive history is packed with glorious, unbelievable insanity. Which of these 10 weird classic cars blew your mind the most? Would you take the Cheese Wedge CitiCar or rule the streets in the Stratos Zero? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the bizarre, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more crazy car history. See you in the next one. Forget everything you know about cars. You think a V8 engine is cool? How about a vintage death trap powered by a massive exposed airplane propeller? Or a vehicle where passengers literally rode backwards staring at the traffic behind them? Automotive history is a graveyard of absolute insanity, built by mad scientists who completely ignored the laws of physics. Today, we are ranking the 10 most shocking and bizarre vintage cars ever built, counting down to a machine that will blow your mind. I dare you to watch this entire video without asking, what were they thinking? If you make it to number 10, prove it by smashing that subscribe button and dropping a car emoji. Let us dive in. Kicking off our list at number 1 is a car that looks less like a motor vehicle and more like an oversized mid-century kitchen appliance. Meet the legendary BMW Isetta. Imagine a tiny car shaped exactly like an egg, where the entire front of the vehicle, including the windshield, the dashboard, and the steering wheel, is actually one giant door that swings wide open. You do not get in from the side. You walk right into the front of it like you are stepping into a refrigerator. And honestly, measuring just 7.5 feet long, it is not much bigger than a modern side-by-side fridge. The history behind this bizarre bubble is actually a fascinating story of corporate survival. After World War II, BMW was on the verge of total bankruptcy. They desperately needed a cheap, economical car to sell to a recovering Europe, but they did not design this one themselves. The Isetta was originally engineered by ISO, an Italian company that literally manufactured refrigerators and motor scooters. BMW bought the licensing rights, shoved a highly reliable 236 cubic centimeter four-stroke motorcycle engine in the back, and accidentally created the best-selling single-cylinder car in human history. Driving an Isetta was an experience unlike any other on the road. Because the steering column was physically attached to the front door, the whole wheel hinged outward via a universal joint when you opened it to squeeze into the two-person bench seat. It had 4 wheels, but the rear 2 were spaced only 19 inches apart. But here is the most terrifying technical quirk. That canvas sunroof was not just for getting fresh air, it was a mandatory emergency escape hatch. If you crashed, the front door would jam shut. Would you drive this bubble today? Let me know. If you think that is weird, wait for number 2. At number 2, we have the Peel P50, officially recognized by the Guinness World Records as the smallest production car ever built in the history of mankind. When I say small, I am not exaggerating. It literally has the footprint of a standard riding lawnmower. It features exactly 1 door on the left side, 1 single windshield wiper, and 1 Cyclops headlight right in the center. If you are even slightly claustrophobic, just looking at this 54-inch long fiberglass box on 3 tiny wheels might give you a panic attack. It is the ultimate definition of personal space on wheels. Built in the 1960s on the Isle of Man, a tiny island situated between Great Britain and Ireland, the P50 was marketed by Peel Engineering as the ultimate hyper-efficient city car. The creators claimed it had seating capacity for exactly 1 adult and 1 shopping bag. That was not a clever marketing joke. That was the literal physical capacity of the cabin. Powered by a microscopic 49 cubic centimeter moped engine making a staggering 4.2 horsepower, this microcar was designed to navigate tight European alleyways. It boasted incredible fuel economy, hitting nearly 100 miles per gallon. But here is the absolute craziest technical limitation of the Peel P50. Its 3-speed manual transmission did not have a reverse gear. To back out of a parking spot, you had to physically get out, grab a literal metal handle attached to the rear bumper, and drag the 130-pound car around like a piece of rolling luggage. Despite offering 0 crash protection and having no reverse, it was completely street legal. Imagine parallel parking this thing in New York City by just picking it up. Could you fit inside one? Tell me below. Up next, another British oddity. Coming in at number 3 is the Reliant Robin, affectionately and mockingly known throughout the United Kingdom as the plastic pig. Visually, it is incredibly jarring to look at. It looks like a relatively normal, slightly boxy station wagon from the back, but it tapers down to a single, lonely wheel right at the front bumper. Made entirely of lightweight fiberglass bolted to a galvanized steel chassis, it looks like a vehicle constantly begging to fall over on its side the moment the wind blows. It is an unforgettable shape that leaves everyone scratching their heads in pure confusion. Now it is time for some serious automotive myth-busting. If you have ever watched the famous television show Top Gear, you probably saw Jeremy Clarkson violently rolling a Reliant Robin every single time he turned a corner. It was hilarious television, but it was a total fabrication. Clarkson later admitted the producers intentionally tampered with the car's differential to guarantee it would flip for comedic effect. In reality, the Robin was built to exploit a massive British tax loophole. Because it weighed under 990 pounds and had 3 wheels, the government taxed it like a cheap motorcycle. When driven normally, the Reliant Robin was surprisingly stable and incredibly practical. Technically, it was a front mid-engine, rear-wheel drive vehicle. The small aluminum engine was mounted up front but tucked entirely behind the front axle, sending power to the rear wheels. This gave it a decent weight distribution, making it a bizarrely effective commuter for working-class families in the 1970s. It was not fast and it was not cool, but it worked flawlessly. Would you trade a wheel to save thousands on your car taxes? Let me know your thoughts. Speaking of missing things, wait until you see number 4. Number 4 is a German oddity that actively messes with your brain the longer you stare at it, the Zündap Janus. Named appropriately after the Roman god with 2 faces looking in opposite directions, this car is perfectly, flawlessly symmetrical. If you cover up the steering wheel inside, the front exterior and the rear exterior look completely identical. It has a massive door on the front just like the BMW we talked about earlier, but it also has an identical massive door on the rear. It is a true automotive optical illusion rolling down the street. This mind-bending machine was initially developed in the 1950s by Dornier, a company famous for building advanced World War II aircraft, before being produced by motorcycle maker Zündap. They wanted to create a spacious family car using a microcar footprint. Their engineering solution was utterly wild. Put the 245 cubic centimeter single-cylinder engine dead in the middle of the vehicle and have the passengers sit back to back. The driver and front passenger looked forward out of the front door, while the rear passengers faced completely backward, staring out the rear door directly at the traffic behind them. Driving the Janus was a masterclass in chaotic physics. Because the heavy engine was right in the middle and the human passengers were positioned at the extreme front and rear ends of the chassis, the car suffered from a terrifying seesaw effect when hitting bumps at its top speed of 50 miles per hour. Furthermore, the rear passengers constantly suffered from severe motion sickness because they were forced to watch the road rapidly receding away from them. Could you handle riding backward on a long, bumpy road trip? Drop a comment below. Up next is a literal fighter jet for the road. Halfway through our list at number 5, we have the Messerschmitt KR200. This machine does not look like a normal car. It looks exactly like the cockpit of a fighter plane that somehow lost its wings and sprouted 3 wheels. Instead of traditional doors, the entire transparent acrylic roof hinges open to the right side like a fighter jet's bubble canopy. Inside, you do not sit side by side. The passenger sits directly behind the driver in a tandem layout, exactly like a pilot and a co-pilot preparing for a high-speed takeoff on the runway. The heavy aviation design influence is not a coincidence at all. Messerschmitt was a massive German aircraft manufacturer responsible for building some of the most fearsome and advanced fighter planes of World War II. After the war ended, they were strictly banned from building airplanes. So they hired an aeronautical engineer named Fritz Fend to help them survive by building cars instead. Fend applied everything he knew about aerodynamics to this vehicle, creating an ultralight, incredibly streamlined microcar that effortlessly sliced through the air, completely redefining what a post-war economy vehicle could look and feel like on the open road. The controls were just as weird as the exterior. Instead of a round steering wheel, you steered using a horizontal aircraft-style steering bar. But the wildest feature was the transmission. Powered by a 191 cubic centimeter 2-stroke engine, it did not have a mechanical reverse gear. To back up, you had to turn the engine off, push the ignition key in further, and restart the engine entirely in reverse. You could technically drive backward at its top speed of 60 miles per hour. Would you drive 60 miles per hour in reverse? Tell me below. Next is an American torpedo. Number 6 takes us to the United States in the late 1940s with the Davis Divan. This three-wheeled American dream looks like a shiny aluminum torpedo or a polished UFO on wheels. It is incredibly aerodynamic, impressively low to the ground, and unbelievably wide. In fact, it only has one single bench seat in the cabin, but the car was so incredibly wide that 4 full-grown adults could sit shoulder to shoulder in the front row. It is a bizarre mix of futuristic styling and massive American proportions, packed into a highly unusual three-wheel layout that turns heads everywhere. The story behind the Davis Divan is pure Hollywood drama and true crime. Gary Davis was a charismatic, fast-talking salesman who promised that his three-wheel divan was the absolute future of American transportation. He claimed it was built using advanced aircraft engineering, utilizing a lightweight aluminum body and a sturdy Hercules 4-cylinder engine. He drummed up massive nationwide hype, raised millions of dollars from eager investors and prospective dealership owners, and set up a massive factory in California. But it was all a house of cards. The company collapsed in a fraud scandal, and Davis eventually went to federal prison. Despite the massive scam, the engineering claims Davis made were wildly ambitious. He boasted to the press that the divan could take a sharp U-turn at 55 miles per hour without flipping over, thanks to its incredibly low center of gravity and unique three-wheel steering geometry. While that was likely a massive exaggeration, the 13 surviving divans today are highly sought-after museum pieces, representing a gorgeous, retro-futuristic dream that never quite took off. Do you think a massive 4-person front seat should make a comeback in modern cars? Let me know. Get ready for a masterpiece missing some crucial parts next. At number 7 is arguably the most breathtakingly beautiful and hopelessly strange car on this entire list, the Norman Timms Special. This car looks like a massive drop of liquid mercury frozen in time. It is impossibly long, gracefully curved, and sits mere inches off the ground. But what is the most bizarre visual element that catches your eye? It has absolutely no doors. To get into the luxurious leather-lined cockpit, you literally had to step right over the beautifully sculpted aluminum side panels. It is a stunning visual statement that prioritizes flowing lines over basic human convenience. This one-of-a-kind masterpiece was created in 1948 by Norman Timms, an incredibly talented mechanical engineer who built race cars for the Indy 500. He wanted to build the ultimate show-stopping personal street cruiser. It took him over 2.5 years to hand-shape the sweeping aluminum body panels over a custom-built steel tube chassis, utilizing modified Ford suspension components. The smooth design was heavily inspired by the pre-war German Grand Prix racers, emphasizing uninterrupted aerodynamics. It weighed about 2,200 pounds, making it surprisingly light for such a massive, long, and imposing vehicle. The technical layout was just as radical as the stunning exterior. Timms put the heavy Buick Straight 8 engine directly behind the driver, making it one of the earliest mid-engine road cars in American automotive history. To access the engine, the entire rear half of the car flipped up hydraulically in one spectacular piece. Tragically, after decades of being lost and undergoing a multi-million-dollar restoration, this priceless piece of history was completely destroyed in the devastating 2018 Woolsey wildfire in California. If you owned a masterpiece with no doors, would you risk driving it? Up next, a driving blimp. Number 8 is the Dymaxion car, a vehicle that looks absolutely terrifying to drive in modern traffic. Imagine a massive 20-foot-long blimp painted silver, rolling down the street on just 3 wheels. It was incredibly tall, bulbous, and could seat an astonishing 11 passengers inside its cavernous cabin. It looks far less like a motor vehicle and much more like a submarine that took a wrong turn at the beach. When you see it in historical footage, it completely dwarfs normal cars. looking like a strange alien spacecraft exploring the roads of 1930s America. The Dymaxion was the brainchild of Buckminster Fuller, a brilliant American architect and eccentric visionary. Fuller did not just want to build a car, he wanted to build an omnidirectional machine that could eventually fly. Dymaxion was his personal brand name, blending the words dynamic, maximum, and tension. He firmly believed his teardrop design was the ultimate aerodynamic shape for fuel efficiency. Powered by a Ford flathead V8 engine tucked in the rear, he convinced wealthy investors to back him, hoping to completely revolutionize mass transit across the country with a fleet of these massive metallic teardrops. But the Dymaxion had a fatal, terrifying flaw: its steering geometry. The engine sent power to the two front wheels, but the single rear wheel handled all the steering, just like a warehouse forklift. This allowed the 20-foot car to spin in a circle on its own axis. But at high speeds of around 90 miles per hour, the rear end would violently swing back and forth, making it completely uncontrollable. A deadly crash during the 1933 Chicago World's Fair instantly killed the project. Would you ride in an 11-passenger blimp steered by one rear wheel? Next, a car that swims. Coming in at number 9, we have the Amphicar Model 770. From the front, it looks like a charming, slightly quirky European convertible from the 1960s with incredibly high ground clearance. But walk around to the back, and you will notice two massive marine-grade nylon propellers sticking straight out from under the rear steel bumper. Yes, this is a mass-produced automobile fully designed to be driven directly into deep water and used as a functioning boat. It is the ultimate hybrid vehicle, designed for the road but secretly longing to cruise across a deep freshwater lake. Designed by Hans Trippel, a German engineer who previously built amphibious vehicles for the military, the Amphicar was heavily marketed to the American public as the ultimate recreational vehicle. You could drive it on the highway, pull right down a concrete boat ramp, engage a special Hermco land and water transmission, and cruise across the water using the front tires as rudders. President Lyndon B. Johnson famously owned one at his Texas ranch. He used to terrify visiting guests by pretending the brakes had failed as he barreled down a steep hill straight into the river, laughing as they screamed in panic. As brilliant as it sounds, it was not exactly perfect. It was famously described by critics as not a very good car and not a very good boat. The name 770 actually comes from its top speeds. It could hit roughly 7 miles per hour in the water and 70 miles per hour on land using its 4-cylinder engine. Plus, the maintenance was a nightmare. After every single swim, the owner had to apply heavy grease to 13 different points under the chassis. Who would you prank by driving into a lake? Get ready for the craziest car ever made. Finally, we have reached number 10. The most bizarre, dangerous, and physics-defying vintage car ever conceived by human hands, the Layette Helica. This is not a metaphor, it is literally an open cockpit wooden airplane fuselage with wire-spoked wheels instead of wings. Right at the very front, completely exposed without any safety cage or metal mesh guard, is a massive spinning wooden airplane propeller. Just looking at it makes you realize how utterly insane early automotive engineering could be. It looks like a prop from a steampunk movie, but this terrifying contraption was completely real and fully functional on public roads. Built in France in 1921 by Marcel Layat, the logic behind this sheer madness was actually quite simple in his mind. Layat believed that normal car transmissions, heavy drive shafts, and complex clutches were too heavy and robbed the engine of valuable power. His solution: remove them all entirely. The 2-cylinder flat-twin engine does not turn the wheels at all. It only spins the giant propeller. The sheer thrust from the propeller simply yanks the ultra-lightweight 550-pound plywood car forward down the road. It was an absolute death trap for pedestrians or anyone standing too close. Driving the Helica was pure, unadulterated terror. Because it weighed almost nothing and had genuine aircraft thrust pulling it, it was incredibly fast, famously clocking a terrifying 106 miles per hour in 1927. To make matters worse, the front wheels were fixed in place. You steered using the rear wheels, making it wildly unstable at high speeds. It was deafeningly loud, and a single pebble kicked up into that wooden prop could shatter it like a bomb. Would you sit behind an exposed spinning propeller at 100 miles per hour? Drop that car emoji now. From tiny cars you drag backward to floating convertibles and propeller-driven death traps, these 10 bizarre vehicles prove human creativity has no limits. The brilliant engineers behind them built machines that were completely unhinged. Which of these weird classic cars would you actually want to take for a spin? Let me know your favorite down in the comments. To uncover more of the craziest stories in automotive history, smash that like button and subscribe right now. See you next time.